It's mansplaining time again. Let's take a look at the various men's movements of recent history and how they compare to feminism. The history of how women have been treated and perceived in society over the last 10,000 years is not one of pride. So, feminism was a necessity, and gaining the right to vote is obviously a huge part of that. So, except for a few of the guys in the men's movement, mostly Reddit and MGTOW, this is an unquestionably valid area. The first wave included techniques that were public activism, including some terrorism, and very different than the second and third waves, partially because of the necessity and the obviousness of the problem. Things get way more complex and nuanced when you start talking about the second wave of feminism. It started in the 1960s, and I would say this is when feminism truly took root. There was activism in public, within romantic relationships, and one method of activism for women was to divorce their husband. Divorces increased drastically during this period. Most of the requests for change and notation of problems were valid, and it did lead to men improving themselves as marital partners from the beginning of the second wave through to about 1995. The third wave of feminism shoots itself in the foot, shaves off its nose to save its face. Really, probably about a third of the complaints of the third wave are valid. And that's partly the nature of social movements. As society evolves, it gets harder and harder to address the remaining problems. Identity politics is all the rage for the last 15 years or so, and the third wave of feminism fits perfectly with this. There is nothing that describes third wave feminism better than someone who wants to claim they are a feminist for the sake of just claiming they're a feminist. If you were to look at entertainment vehicles regarding third wave, the Sex and the City was probably the third wave in its zygote stage, and the teenager stage would be HBO's Girls, where they complain that men abuse their charisma. So let's compare feminism to the various modern men's movements. Feminism began as a response to obvious oppression in society, politics, romance, and marriage, and in probably several other areas. The men's movement of late began as a response to more subtle, insidious oppression within romance, marriage, and divorce. Within feminism, after the improvements of the first wave, things became a little more subtle, so the focus was moved from obvious oppression to more subtle oppression, such as men expecting women to do all or most of the mundane household tasks. Although the germination of the current men's movements have their beginnings back in the 70s, really only became what could be called a movement about 7 years ago. There have been no improvements, therefore there's little, if any, refocusing going on in the men's movement. Feminism has had a ton of social support for at least 50 years, not by everyone, but by enough people to keep it very powerful. The men's movement, on the other hand, has almost zero cultural support. It's laughed at, treated like it's a flat earth society type thing. And blue pill men who know that red pill men are correct will not discuss the issue. Philosophically, feminism comes with the postmodern premise that women are at least somewhat superior to men, and that if women were given the chance, they would never oppress men. The men's movement comes with the existential/evolutionary premise that neither men nor women have much to be proud of regarding how they treat each other. The social sciences can be like economics, kind of a dismal science. And feminism has been a major force in the social sciences for over 50 years. They tend to use anecdotal and empirical evidence to prove that women are oppressed, and then claim to be only empirical. Men's issues tend to be shunned pretty harshly by the social sciences, and men in general, whether they're part of the men's movement or not, tend to use anecdotal and empirical evidence to eclectically draw conclusions. The men's movement members tend to use that kind of reasoning regarding the risks of dating the average woman. Feminism is attractive to both the privileged and the disenfranchised and not privileged alike. On the other hand, the men's movement tends to be attractive to men who are simply losers with women and or have been utterly mind-fucked in romance or legally fucked in a divorce or something. And they want to take some time and figure out how things really work. Feminists are still doing political action in public while also doing political action within romance. They might say, well, he held the door open for me, so he's a sexist, but he didn't pay for the meal, so he's a loser. Both genders suffer from unfair expectations that are specific to their gender. The difference between the feminist and the men's rights activist is that the men's rights activist will withdraw and start to manifest their rejection of expectations while single, whereas women will begin to reject those expectations after commitment. That could be moving in together or when he agrees to commit or during marriage. The way that men tend to reject expectations, be they part of a men's movement or not, tends to be more practical, like how much work is it for me to do such? What am I going to get out of using pomade in my hair rather than hairspray? It's more of a practical question. And men are simply less likely to jump on a bandwagon regarding what expectations they're going to reject. And sadly, since power is such an innate human drive, we come to the last comparison. With feminism, power comes from the sisterhood, and the sisterhood is not just feminists. It's women. Some of the most ferocious feminist behavior and perspectives will come from conservative women sometimes. Feminism has a lot of cultural acceptance, although that's a little bit threatened lately. Men do have the delayed, very non-liquid power of delaying or being unwilling to commit. This power in men would be akin to having the ability to knock over a gravestone in North Korea through a portal that only opens every 3 months. Now, I don't think that men's natural ability to be funny is greater, or if it is greater, much greater than women's. But I do know for sure that men's rights people, people who are in the men's movement, have a far better sense of humor than feminists do. And through some mix of privilege, cultural conditioning, and evolution, men seem to be much more willing to admit to their own gender's shortcomings than women are willing to admit to their gender's shortcomings. That is another very non-liquid power, something that could actually be used against men. So, those are the current men's movements in a nutshell and how they compare to feminism. Thanks for watching.
How is baby formed? How is baby formed? How girl get pregnant?
So feel free to tear me up in the comments. Sources available upon request.